My name is Susanna Magenheimer, also known as Random Artist 222 on my blog and on Instagram. You'll mostly find me on Instagram. I love the community there and how everybody shares their art and supports each other. And a shout out to all my friends on Instagram, all the random peeps that follow me. This is my first video on YouTube, so I promise it'll get better every time, because I know that it gets frustrating watching other videos where you're just hearing or let me find that pencil, or where did I put that, and you're like, can you just please get on with it? So I totally get that, and I will be better in the future, I promise. I posted this technique on Instagram a few weeks ago, and it caught the eye of the owner of the Crafter's Workshop. She has an amazing line of stencils, both in 6x6 and 12x12. As you can see here, I'm going to be demoing the sunflower stencil. I put it there so you can see the whole thing. And it's a great stencil to work with. One, it's beautiful, but two, it's got the spacing I like for this technique that I'm going to demonstrate. You could do this on larger spaces, but I find that it works more on the smaller area stencils, where you can actually, what I call the stencil technique is the scrubbing technique. So basically I figured this out on my own when I was sitting there cleaning stencils, and I used a lot of modeling paste, and I've tried a lot of modeling paste out there. I was cleaning off my stencil, and it finally just had that eureka moment, you know, where you're like, oh, I can't believe I haven't done this before. And while I was cleaning off my stencil on my craft mat, I noticed there was a second generation print being left behind on my craft mat, and I'm like, oh, I want to capture that. So I got another piece of paper and, you know, basically started over, worked the stencil like anybody would normally work it. But then when I was doing the wiping off of the excess, I noticed, or I was able to capture that. And this is what you see in this photo, or this index card that I did the sunflower stencil on, that caught the eye of the owner of Crafter's Workshop, and she asked me to demo it, so that's what I'm doing. She was also very kind enough to send me a few products that she's just now releasing, and I have to say I'm very happy with the products. The clear gesso that she sent me is amazing stuff. It tripped me up for a minute, because when I was talking with her, I was thinking there would be a matte medium, and she actually was able to concoct this so it acts as a clear gesso, which I love because it kind of retacks your surface so that you can, you know, continue to color on it or draw on it. And it also acts as a sealer, but it also acted like a beautiful matte medium. Let me show you this index card. I don't know if you can see this clearly or not, but basically this is the clear gesso. It left very few streaks, which I was really impressed with. And this is just a sample card, so don't go, what the heck is she creating? I fussy cut out some fish to see how they would glue on. They glued on beautifully, very quickly. Again, very little streaking that I would be like annoyed with, and I'm kind of particular. So I also, as you can see in these areas of the fish, used my Pitt artist brush big brush pen. I can never say this fast. So, and I went in there and I highlighted the areas in the fish underneath the body, right in there, inside the whatever those are. And I also, just for fun, put it on the fins, and with my finger, you have very little time to sit there and re-blend that in. But it did a great job, and I was just testing color here, to be honest, to see if it would take color, because there are some gessos, clear gessos and mediums, matte mediums, that do not take color very well. Over here, I wanted to test out a tissue fish that I had on tissue paper, and you can see that the tissue paper pretty much absorbed into the clear gesso, except for a little few pieces here. And that doesn't really annoy me, because if you're doing mixed media, you're going to get grungy and you're going to go for that kind of look. If you don't like it, just find a pen that kind of mimics that color, and very quickly just go in there and dab it in there, and you can basically obliterate any of that whiteness. The black ink you can see here did not move at all. I had put this down as clear gesso over this watercolor. I call it watercolor. It's Tattered Angel spray. It's a water soluble product. I sprayed it on there. When I let it dry, I made sure half of it was heat set, half of it was not, just to see if it would make a difference when I applied the clear gesso, and it did not. The clear gesso came on very well. It didn't move any of the ink. This is archival ink from Ranger, which is my go-to for mixed media because I love the fact that it doesn't move. But there are quite a few other inks out there that I also have in my range that I like too, that don't move as much, or don't move and move very little. So again, here's another fish that I just went and took a shin hand marker and just tried it out here, an alcohol marker, and I thought it did a nice job of keeping the color bright, vibrant, something where you can keep playing once you seal your base, because everybody knows watercolor will move when you use product over it. It's just the nature of the beast. It's water soluble. If you use a water soluble product, that's what's going to happen. You also want to make sure you use a really soft mop brush. I use one that's a little bit bigger than this. I'll show it next time, but it's a very soft brush. And when I use the clear gesso, I just put it on here. You don't want to be grinding it into whatever you're doing, because then you will move the color no matter how good the product is. So always use a really soft brush for that purpose. Anyway, so enough of that. She also sent me black gesso, which I have to say is my go-to now if I ever want to use black paint or black gesso, if I ever want to prime a surface. Here's an example of one that I did that I'm working on this project, and you can see that that's something I did after the fact, so please ignore that. But you can see how opaque it is and how it doesn't have any kind of streaking. I was just like, I'm in love with this product. So I'm just trying to figure out more ways to use it. So it's definitely one you want to have in your arsenal. And lastly, she sent me 2 of the modeling pastes because she knows I'm a modeling paste freak. She has a light and fluffy modeling paste as well as a heavy duty modeling paste. They all of them out there in the market work differently. But what I really love about these things is when I look at modeling paste, what I want to look at is seepage under the stencil. How does it take color? Does it resist the color, or does it take in the color? Those are pretty much my standards for, a good modeling paste. And I found that both of these did a nice job. I'll show you a little sample really quick, just so you can see what I'm talking about. On the light, I'll put it there, hopefully it won't roll away. On the light modeling paste, this is also a Crafter's Workshop stencil, one of their mini remnant ones. You can see this one is with the, like I said, light modeling paste, and it pretty much resisted the color. But it did pick up, because of the way I applied the model of the paste, I scrubbed some of it back. It did pick up some of the color from underneath, and some modeling paste will do that. Here's another example of where I use my stencil scrubs technique, so that most of this paste is actually off. It's not thick. It's just, like a ghost of it. And you can see it didn't pick up the color I sprayed over it. So that's an interesting technique when you want to create something that you need this kind of effect, a ghosting effect on it. There are others that do this too on the market that have a strong resist, but I love this one because it actually ghosts it versus just outright resist. So you get a little bit of both worlds. The other paste she sent me was the heavy, you can see this, the heavy modeling paste. And I have to say I do love this one because, again, here is 2 examples of, again, using a Crafter's Workshop remnant stencil. You can see that when I sprayed over this, the modeling paste took the color. It wasn't too far off from the original color, so I really love that. But it's still enough of a difference of a color that it could stand on its own versus some paste out there that will actually pretty closely mimic the color that you put on there. So you have like pink on pink and green on green. Here I feel like I have the green that I sprayed with, but then also a lighter green and variations within the color scale. Also over here I tried it again, and you can see this is one where I should say this first one here is one I did with the scrubbing technique. So I took a lot of it off. Here's one, and I don't know if you can see that really clearly, but that's, I'm trying to show you the thickness on that. It's a really stiff modeling paste. I love that. The lines are very clean. I love that about it. And I love that it takes color. So I was very impressed with this. So that's my little intro to the product line here. I'm using, like I said, the Crafters Workshop Sunflower Stencil designed by Carmen Medlin. I'm also demonstrating here a stencil from Crafty Chica that just came out called La Rosa. And it's a beautiful stencil to do this process with because it's got that, it doesn't have huge, areas where, you're moving modeling paste over a large amount of space where this technique can get kind of iffy. So you want to really think about that when you use it. It does work on the larger spaces. I'm just saying it's easier on the smaller ones and you get more of a dramatic effect. Every stencil, by the way, has what I call a flat side and a curved side. It's easy on the Crafters Workshop to tell what is what because they have lasered in their name. So I know this is the side I want to use because there will be minimal seepage. It just basically, let me move this out of the way for a second. It basically sits on as flat as possible onto your surface, which is what you want to begin with. If you start it the other way, which basically I have been known to do myself, so you're not alone out there if you've done it. Because it's not the flat side, you can see, and you'll have to just trust me or get your stencils out and check it out, but there's a side that will have a little bit of lip underneath it, which will be a seepage attracting, mechanism. So beware and danger and all that stuff. If you want the best impression on a stencil, use the side that is the flat side. So with that being said, the first rule of modeling paste, let it be written, let it be said, let it be known, is never let it dry on your products. Never let it dry on your tools. Like if you're using a spatula, and I have my go-to spatula that, I basically, like I said, I never let it dry on here because it's really hard to get off. I mean, I have to say it's impossible. It's like concrete. So you want to make sure that, you clean that, you clean your stencil off. And that's how I found my ghosting effect is I pull this off, pull the stencil aside, and I'd start wiping it back, with a paper towel just to get the most of it off because you really don't want this going down your drain. So as you wipe off most of this, that's how you get that ghosting technique. So again, you don't want it to get, if it hardens in these little cracks in the little pieces of the stencil, you're going to get, you're going to be sad. So if you catch it early enough, and I always keep a pile of these on my desk, Purell sanitizing hand wipes will help remove some of that. When I goof and I doodle a piece of paint or ink or something, every now and then this will do the trick if I catch it right at the right time and pull off the color, or in this case pull off the modeling paste. But I'm talking for a small area. I'm not talking like if you let your whole stencil dry that you will end up with a dead stencil basically. So the other thing you can do too is, which I don't do, I usually just, in this case I would shut off the camera and go clean it, is keep a little tin with water enough to cover your stencil, and also a tin obviously big enough to hold your stencil. You never want to bend your stencil in something, no matter how strong people say their stencils are, plastic bends. So just be careful of that. Let's give this technique a try. Now I said that every stencil comes, oops, I'm holding this one backwards. I said that every stencil has a bottom and a top to it. So here you can see the name, it says the Crafters Workshop. So I know I'm working with the right side of the stencil that I want to have on here. And I have actually chosen, because my desk is a plastic buffet table actually thing that I found at Home Depot. It works really well, except that it's plastic, right? So as all you crafters know, you start putting stuff on the sides, and it kind of bows in the middle. So I always want to make sure I have like a hard something that's flat that I know is even, that I can work with when I'm working with a stencil. So, or doing this modeling paste technique. Again, you're working with the top side. Now every stencil has a grain. I call it a grain. This is obvious on the flower ones. You see this thing right here, the little specks inside the stencil, the little, I don't know what you want to call those, the little divisions within the petals. All right. You don't want to be taking your modeling paste this way, because you're going to lift this and bend it and then be really sad. You want to make sure that when you're working with modeling paste, you work in a direction, and you don't want to be working back and forth in that direction. And no matter what technique you're working with, you do not want to be, pushing down really hard and scrubbing really hard in it. You will end up with seepage and crying and being like, how come this doesn't work? So don't be frustrated if this doesn't work for you the first time, or the second time, or the third time. But if you work with stencils, you're going to go, oh, okay, this makes total sense. And those of you who haven't worked with stencils, you're going to go, I need more stencils. Let me go buy some. And Crafters Workshop has a huge array of them. So I'm going to put this aside because I don't want it ruined. This is a new, I don't want to say new tape. It's a new tape I discovered anyway, from 3M. It is a very, they call it like a really delicate, not a duct tape, but a painter's tape. Normally painter's tape looks like this, right? And this is 3M's painter's tape. This stuff will definitely lift off. But the problem is sometimes it lifts off color and lifts off, you know, part of your project, and that's not a good thing. It has its purpose in my craft room, depending on, like, I want to make sure the stencil that, like here, I'm just putting the tape on the side here. I wouldn't have a problem using that because basically I'm just going to pull it off this way. It's not going to, well, in this case it is going to be a little bit on the index card. Okay, and the second thing is index cards. I like to have index cards on hand with, I actually keep them, if you want to see really quick, I just keep them in a little bucket thing that I bought on Amazon. And so when I want to slurp up anything on my craft mat, or I want to test a technique, or I want to make myself a note, whatever, this is right there handy and I can just grab them. What I have in that one is what I call your everyday index cards. You know what I mean? They're really flimsy. Nothing I really want to craft on. I might want to stamp on them, but in terms of crafting or testing a technique, not one I want to do this on. There is a vendor on Amazon who makes these 3x5 cards at 130 pounds. And I love it because, you see it? It's not flimsy. It doesn't bend. It takes all these samples you've seen me do is on these what I call tough index cards. 130 pound is great for this because you can see it's like a really minimal warping. And I've actually talked to the guy about maybe doing these in a little bit larger size for when I don't want to work in a journal. I just want to pop some paper. All right, so now the technique. So after all that blah, 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 hopefully it was useful to you. We're going to give this a go. Oops. And always close your jar right after using this because you don't want to, your modeling paste to dry in the jar. There's two ways you can do this, I guess. One is you don't want to waste it. And I figured out a way not to waste it, but if you want to do it 2-4. So you take your spatula, put it on there, carry it through. I'm just checking to make sure you guys can see. Yeah. Take your spatula and just go like that. You know, pick it up, go like that. Again, something to practice out because it's not something you can learn or do in 10 seconds. And you can see that because I taped it up, it's popping a little bit here. So what I might want to do is just pull some of this tape. Just put a little bit right there just to help hold things down. Once you start the technique, for some reason it acts like a suction cup, and the stencil will actually suction to the mat, so don't be totally afraid of that. But like I said, you can either do it one of two ways. Go like this and go, right, here's my official modeling paste stenciled item, pull the index card out, and then whatever you have remainder on here, pull onto another index card to create your ghosting effect. If you just want to go right to your ghosting effect, this is what I do. I just take, oh, in this case, I don't want to create a resist effect, so I'm going for the harder modeling paste. And remember, closing my lid there. So what you want to do is I just dip it in there, this paper towel, because I don't want, remember, you don't want a lot. It's just basically what's hanging on to the stencil that's creating the effect. So again, knowing my grain is this way, because I don't want to go backwards, I'm going to start pulling this modeling paste across the thing, and before it dries, I'm pulling. You see this? I keep pulling color back and away from it, back and away, back and away. And when I need more, I just go in there and grab it just a little bit. Don't gunk it up, and then bring it from the outside and bring it in. And just when you're eyeballing it, you can see it from my viewpoint anyway really well. You can tell if you're getting too much or too little, or you need a little bit more. I need a little bit more. I'm starting it off, always off the page, so that I don't bring a big glump of modeling paste into what I'm doing. So I think I just need a little bit more here. And you know, you don't want to be perfect at this technique. You want it to be so that there is irregularities in it. You want it to be, you know, kind of funky in that regard, grungy. You want it to be, organic, abstract. You know, you want the illusion of the, I'm just going to put a little bit more just in the seed area, because they're seeds and they should pop a little bit more. And again, I'm just going like that, making sure everything is as off as it can be. There. And then what I'm going to do, cardinal rule of modeling paste, I already got some on me, I always get stuff on me, is I'm pulling it off. And I'm going to go rinse this. So I'll be right back and I'll show you what I've accomplished here. Okay, so I've washed my stencil. It's all nice and pretty. Again, make sure it's out of any nooks and crannies, because that's where it will mess up, especially your stencil. Okay, so here's the ghost, or the second generation, or Susanna scrubbing technique, whatever you want. It's also something about this modeling paste, it dries fast, so depending how dark you want the color to take, you know, is how fast you want to, you know, put your spray on. And again, just sitting up so you can see that this is as thin as it gets. Still learning the camera. Hello. Okay, so there you see. It's really thin. You can see areas where it's a little more on the edges, less on the inside. Some of it's missing. It's all good. That's what you want. So I have from Art Anthology Vineyard, which is a color that I just adore, and it's discontinuing, I think. I wish she'd make it, because it's this beautiful winey twilight purpley color. And the other one I'm using is from Tattered Angels, a favorite product of mine, by the way, along with Art Anthology, by the way. It's called Haunted Shadows. I don't know if they're making this one either, but you know, they always come out with similar colors, so don't be like, oh, I can't do this. Just pick colors that you like. And the reason I picked this one, it has a mica, and the reason I can get this effect, again standing up, you can see here that the spray went into the crevices, right? But the mica stayed on the top and gave me this awesome technique. And I pulled some of that through to get that effect of the starburst that you're seeing right there. So let me spray this off camera. I'm using a box, basically, that I just hollowed out so that I can spray and not get it all over my desk. So I'm going to just step aside for a moment and spray. Okay, so I took a little break to go ahead and spray the card. It's kind of hard to do that on a desk in front of a camera, but I am going to show you this effect. And this is one of the reasons I really love this modeling paste, is it dries really fast, so you have to do this fast, is the fact that you can, like you can see in this case, this is the original that I just did. I actually took a paper towel, and this modeling paste was just about to start to dry, and I started pulling back, and you can see how I'm pulling back color to get that effect. And this over here I think has dried too much. It won't let me pull any more back. But do you see how beautiful the effect can be if once you start to figure it out? And you know, like I said, you got to play with stuff like this. It doesn't just, you know, poof, done. And I'm an expert at it. It actually took me stumbling on the fact that I had the right product. I could pull back color on modeling paste, which you would think once modeling paste is on there, you can't touch it. And you can't if you're doing it in the heavy application like this one, you know, where you have dimension on this. So it's really, you know, you can hear it, right? You can't hear this. This modeling paste is just applied like a ghost, like a total ghost has enveloped it. I couldn't do what I did just now with this, with the paper towel, on this while it was wet. This thick, this wet, you just destroy the whole image, right? So you want to just apply that modeling paste as thin as you can, pull off as much as you can, and then very quickly grab whatever have the sprays that you want to work with on hand. Oops. And that's that moment where I'm reaching for something that should be on my desk. Grab your sprays, know how you kind of want to do it. And, you know, I started out with the vineyard to get this light effect, and I actually dabbed. My technique for any kind of blending, which some people have said I do pretty fairly well, is I don't just do one coat. I do one or two. I do two or three to get a nice blend of color. Here you can see again, just a nice blend. If you just do one spray, spritz, spritz, it's going to look broken up. If you apply it like two or three coats of it, you're going to get a much more incorporated background. This technique will work pretty much with any water-based spray. The thing here is catch it really fast. Get that modeling paste on, have everything ready, dump your stencil in a tin with water so that it doesn't get all messed up and you end up being sad, because nobody wants anybody to be sad. And then, like I said, apply the spray. And in this case, I wanted a starburst effect, so I just kept doing it like this. And pull back the color over the modeling paste. So you can see where the modeling paste white resist part of it starts to come through and create this really gorgeous effect. You can see it this way too. Bring it close up. The seeds are accentuated, and you can, you know, you could add more modeling paste to this. Oops, see, it's still a little wet. You could add a little bit more modeling paste if you wanted the seeds to pop more. It's up to you. Art is art. So this is my technique that I stumbled upon. I hope you have fun using it. And if you do, tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you did with it. And thank you so much for bearing with me on my first video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. I plan on doing quite a few more techniques because that's what I'm into. So thank you very much for showing up, and have a great day.